Now, I just spent the last half hour of the program explaining what the Christian fascists tried to pull off in Kansas. And we have had 4 years of watching these lying, filthy bums and punks and terrorists with their lies and deception. And we had 2 political campaigns to see even further the depths that these Christian terrorists would go to. We have watched Catholics and Protestants totally, I mean fucking totally, corrupt themselves, the language, what's left of their bloody, murderous religion. They have just turned all of it into weapons of torture and confusion and lies. It's unbelievable. And the ultimate goal, of course, is to destroy even the thought of democratic governance. So the New York Times, having a front row seat, probably the best front row seat to what the Christian terrorists have done in this country over the past 5-6 years, and over the past 40 years, but I mean, really intensely the past 4 or 5, the best front row seat, they still decided to write a piece entitled "A Cynical Low" for the Democratic Party. What? So when I saw that, I thought, what the fuck could this be? Well, let me quote from it. I will pause occasionally to make my snotty remarks. Quoting, "On the anniversary of the January 6th attacks at the U.S. Capitol, Roy Cooper, the governor of North Carolina, took to Twitter not just to condemn that day's violence, but also to warn that the dark forces behind it were still very much alive and still a threat to the future of American democracy. Mr. Cooper wrote, quote, "We know that those who wanted to topple our democracy haven't given up, and they have moved their assault to state capitals and legislatures across the country. Governors must help lead the way in standing up for the truth, protecting our democracy, and making sure that it's the vote of the people that decides elections." End quote. The editorial board goes on. The governor was right to sound the alarm. So it is deeply troubling to see Mr. Cooper and the organization he heads, the Democratic Governors Association, support and finance a cynical political strategy to support pro-Trump candidates in Republican primaries on the theory that they would be easier for Democrats to beat in the fall general election. I will pause for a moment. Ooh, the Democratic Governors Association is supporting and financing what the Times editorial board calls a cynical political strategy? What is that strategy? To pump in money. Now, how these Christian terrorists use the money is up to them, isn't it? Back to the editorial. Anyone who proclaims concern about the future of democracy shouldn't come within a whiff of these democracy-denying candidates, let alone help them win votes. Okay, I agree with that. I agree that we all should just stay away from these Nazi demons, these Christian terrorists. But back to the editorial. But Mr. Cooper and other Democratic Party groups have been elevating the proponents of the big lie over their moderate Republican opponents all year, making a mockery of the American political system. The Democratic Governors Association has been making a mockery? Making a mockery of the American political... What? Let me go on. It is a terrible approach on 2 counts. First, it's profoundly irresponsible. What if these election deniers actually win? And second, if Democrats believe that democracy is in danger and they need Republican support to save it, or at least a reality-based GOP in our 2-party system, then they have weakened their standing as defenders of democracy by aligning with those who would thwart it. What? Who the fuck wrote this after how many martinis? Are you kidding me? Democrats do not believe, after 4 years of Trump and 2 years of Trumpism, Democrats, I would hazard a guess, don't believe that democracy is in so much danger that they need Republican support to save it. Of course it's in danger. It's on its last legs. It's lying athwart its deathbed. But it's there because of Republicans. And there is no Republican Party anymore. There are only fascist Christians, Christian terrorists who have murdered the Republican Party. Do the editorial board members of the New York Times not get that? Apparently they don't. Apparently the editorial board of the New York Times, which, by the way, is separate from the news gathering organizations for sure, but apparently the members of the editorial board honestly believe there's still something called the Republican Party, that it's still alive, that it's vibrant, that it's working from the right of the political spectrum to increase democratic ideals, small d. Does the editorial of the New York Times editorial board still believe that? You know, you folks got to stop with the afternoon martinis. Are you kidding me? They go on. Maryland provides a vivid example of this foolishness. There, Mr. Cooper's group, the Democratic Governors Association, threw its money, an estimated $2 million, toward ads boosting the candidacy of Dan Cox, a pro-Trumper who attended the rally leading up to the January 6th riot, and who still preaches that Donald Trump was cheated out of the presidency. The Governors Association reasoned that Democrats would stand a better chance of beating Mr. Cox in a general election than a moderate Republican like Kelly Schultz, the candidate backed by the popular departing governor, Larry Hogan, a Republican. So far, this bizarre strategy has paid off. Mr. Cox won the primary. Ta-da! Now, let me ask you, and I'm not expecting you to answer because I'll answer for you, but let me ask you, was there anything in the strategy of the Democratic Governors Association in supporting this Cox asshole? Was there anything that was done that was based in lies against Mr. Cox? No. What was done was money was contributed so that the Christian terrorists who promote Cox would then go ahead and use the money to spread the lying bullshit that Mr. Cox is famous for, as is all Trump supporters. As are all Trump supporters. So the New York Times editorial board is just losing its shit over something that, I mean, who said it? Politics ain't beanbag. And surely the editorial board of the New York Times, like I said a second ago, has had a front row seat to the fucking insanity that the Christian terrorists, a.k.a. the Republican Party, has introduced into our political reality in this country. Back to the editorial. The Democratic governors are not alone in their cynicism. Cynicism? Cynicism? How about realism, editorial board? The Democratic governors are not alone in their cynicism. In Michigan, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, that would be the DCCC, bought a television ad highlighting the close relationship between Mr. Trump and a pro-Trumper named John Gibbs, who was seeking to oust a popular moderate, Representative Peter Meijer. Mr. Meijer was among the handful of Republicans who voted to impeach Trump following the Capitol insurrection. The basic playbook goes like this. On their face, the ads and mailers, the ad in Michigan reminds voters that Mr. Gibbs was handpicked by Mr. Trump. The ads and mailers are framed as an attack and a warning. But its message, the Meijer camp believes, raised Mr. Gibbs' appeal among the district's conservative voters and gave him recognition he could not otherwise afford. Mr. Meyer lost by fewer than 4,000 votes on Tuesday to Mr. Gibbs. Well, I guess I should stop here and come up with some kind of a tisk in order to satisfy the editorial board of the New York Times. They say on their face, the ads and mailers. The ad in Michigan reminds voters that Mr. Gibbs was handpicked by Mr. Trump. Is that a lie, New York Times editorial board? No, it is not a lie. It is the fucking truth. And what is Mr. Trump, if not a fascist son of a bitch who wants to be Mussolini? Why would the New York Times editorial board stick its uppity fucking nose into this kind of a situation? You claim, editorial board, that you're defending democracy? Horseshit! You are blasting people who are trying to defend democracy. You fight fire with fire. So what does the editorial board of the New York Times expect Democrats to do? To sit back while wave after wave of Christian terrorism rolls over this country and not fight back using, on a very minimal level, some of the same tactics that the terrorists are using? Wow. Back to what the editorial board wrote. Democrats have made similar moves in Colorado, Pennsylvania, and California, where a Democratic super PAC funded an ad criticizing the bona fides of David Valadao, another of the 10 Republicans who voted to impeach. Mr. Valadao narrowly defeated a right-wing candidate in June's primary. So, overall, the results have been mixed. The most extreme candidates in Colorado's Republican primaries for senator, governor, and in the hotly contested 5th Congressional District did not win in June, despite millions of dollars spent by Democrats earlier this summer on TV ads, mailers, and text messages seeking that outcome. So let me pause here and say, well, if the expenditure of all those millions of dollars didn't work, editorial board of the New York Times, what the fuck are you whining about? I mean, if it didn't work, what's your point? Oh, that's right. You're taking the Democratic Party to task and saying it's a cynical low for the Democratic Party. Oh, get fucking real. Back to the board. In Illinois, however, Democrats were able to help a far-right Republican candidate for governor win his primary over a more moderate opponent backed by the GOP establishment. I'll digress again. I wish the New York Times would understand that there is no such thing as a GOP establishment. Who would that be? Would that be Mitch McConnell? The one who fucked over the Supreme Court and turned it into a bastion of fascist rulings? Is that who you're referring to when you talk about the GOP establishment? Who the fuck? Who are you talking about? Susan Collins? I mean, take a breath. Back to the editorial. No one is suggesting the scheming is anywhere near as dangerous as the efforts by Mr. Trump and his allies. Well, it sure as fuck sounds like it. It sounds like exactly you're doing that. No one is suggesting the scheming is anywhere near as dangerous as the efforts by Mr. Trump and his allies, which include Republican lawmakers and officials across the country, to subvert democratic norms, pressuring state officials in Georgia to concoct votes for Mr. Trump and investigate false election fraud claims, ginning up slates of fake electors, discussing ideas to tamper with the Justice Department, firing the acting attorney general, bullying the vice president to violate his constitutional duty, whipping up supporters into a frenzy before they marched on the Capitol on January 6th, and refusing to commit to a peaceful transfer of power at so many turns? Well, New York Times, in my humble opinion, whoever the fuck wrote this, you just blew your entire argument into tiny little bits of bullshit. You just laid out what the Republicans, the fascist Christian, the Christian terrorists, have been doing for 6 fucking years, and you're saying that because the Democratic Governors Association contributed money to the campaigns of these nuts so the Democrats could defeat them in the general election, that somehow you're going to take the Democratic Party to task? Are you people on the editorial board drunk? Are you out of your fucking minds? You just laid out a case to do what the Democratic Governors Association has done. To do anything that is legal. That's not what the fascist Christians do, but to do anything that is legal in order to stop these fuckers. Or are you like peace for our time? Are you like the rolled umbrella guy? Are you like after meeting with Hitler in Munich and you go back to England and you say, well, I have managed peace for our time. I've given the Nazi Czechoslovakia. Jesus Christ. Now, back to the Times editorial. As Governor Cooper notes, the stakes for how the American experiment proceeds have never been higher. Of course, politics can be an unclean business in which gamesmanship abounds. Gamesmanship? But even if this tactic helps win a few seats this year, it will come at a steep price, threatening the political survival of the few Republicans who are willing to rebuild a strong center-right party that will step up to protect democratic norms, an alternative that the United States desperately needs. Well, see, let me interrupt again. This is where I think that the editorial writers, the editorial board, whoever wrote this, is completely myopic, completely does not, cannot, or willfully chooses ignorance to see there is no such Republican Party or base, as they suggest, left. It doesn't exist. It's been slowly destroyed for 42 years. And now what you have is a conglomeration of Christian nutfucks, Christian terrorists, Trumpists, MAGA animals, white males who are scared shitless that all of a sudden their skin's going to turn brown or something. I mean, this is your Republican Party, New York Times. Wake the fuck up! If you can. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcast. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.